What is up, everybody? Chiefs Collective back at it. We got stuff to talk about. O-line, D-line battles. They signed a new defensive end today. Cyrus Allen, the hype seems there. It's rising every day, and I'm pretty excited to talk about it with Mitchell Schwartz and Nate Taylor right after. Mitch, Nate, how are you guys doing? I just realized I need to flip you guys. There we go.
That. It was kind of nice to be an all-pro right tackle for a little bit. Yeah.
I think you're in the middle of all the social posts. I think you should be in the middle.
Okay, sure.
Well, let's see. We've got plenty to talk about, but Mitch, I know you went to practice yesterday. Nate, you've been there a lot in recent days. What do we want to talk about first? We want to talk briefly about the new defensive end signing that's not a signing yet? Emmanuel Ogbah?
Yeah. Another former Chief coming back home. Emmanuel Ogbah. It's a one-year deal, as Adam Schefter reported earlier today. I can't think it's for a ton of money because, as we've talked about before, the Chiefs still have roughly like $4 million in salary cap space. Now, there will be a question about, does his contract equal the top 51 for the salary cap purposes, or will it fall off, or somebody will fall off behind it? So it could be about the same, give or take. But, yeah, this is a kick the tires, someone who, it's so funny. We got Steve Spagnuolo today, and he's like, well, already knows the system. It'll be great to have him back. He did play football last year. Don't look too far into that, but
just what Chiefs fans wanted to hear. He knows the system.
He knows the system. He's played before, but hey, he's better than whoever was going to be your fifth defensive defensive end entering, preseason opener. So it's a positive, slight upgrade, I guess, at the position.
I looked too far into it already. I apologize. 4.2 win percentage last year. That would be the worst on the Chiefs, in the Chiefs defensive end room, out of everybody who played last year. If you take any credit or credence or pay any attention to PFF, the run blocking grade was definitely much lower. Again, different system. I don't know if I'm going to read too much into it. I do think it at least raises the floor a little, but yeah, fans are pretty divided. Some disappointed, feeling like they could have done a little bit more than that. Some laughing, like, of course it was a former Chief. I don't know. I do know that before camp, before any injuries happened, and Gelati even nursing this hamstring, you could have made an argument that a defensive end, a veteran guy of some fashion, needed to be added. I love the idea of Clowney. He was obviously gone because the Texans needed him, I guess. Sure. Which is good for them. Happy for him. But yeah, Mitch, what do you think of this signing, and what do you read into it, if anything at all?
Yeah, my first thought is more, what role is he trying to fill? Is it, kind of first and second down, a little more run stopping? I know you just cited a stat that was not so favorable with that, but theoretically still a bigger dude, strong, potentially in Spags' scheme where it's a little more, hold the point of attack as a defensive end. Is that going to give them, another guy to kind of throw in there if, Gelati's injured, if they've, had 2 weeks of our Mason Thomas, and maybe he's more of a third down guy for the first year or two. So I don't know if that's kind of the way they're thinking of it. Like, we just need a bigger, statter guy to kind of be able to, either start opposite George when he's out there, or to spell Karlaftis when they need, maybe the guy over the wide tight end. All these offenses going under center with, blocking tight ends. Maybe he's the point man in those, defensive structures. So is it that? Is it the pass rush side of things? I don't know that answer, and Nate might have a little bit more insight on that, but however you look at it, it's good to have a guy in there who's had some success in the past, maybe not as much success this past year as, we've seen before. I do think he left Kansas City, had more success with Miami, it seemed like.
Yes.
So that is, a good thing. And just kind of how he slots in is to me a little bit more interesting than the signing itself.
Nate, real quick, just to punch in real quick. I had something and completely lost it, so never mind. Have a good day. Carry on.
Nate, what have you heard with, do you know what the role is going to be? Is he like a replacement for a specific archetype?
Yeah, so that, Nate, and then this is what I was going to say. Did
Okay.
the fact that Ashton Gelati was limited yesterday, but then he was then not a go at all today, play a bit of an impact in this? Because it seems like they tried to ramp up the hamstring, was limited, and now they held him back out again. So that was my question that I forgot and remembered in 5 seconds.
No worries at all. It's not great that, again, sometimes the coaching staff says, hey, it's a hamstring, it's a minor thing, he'll be back. And then you're like, the athlete's like, well, it's not minor to me. Like, I would like to feel 100%. Are we going to be in pads again? Oof, I don't know. I would like to be, back to full strength in pads because Andy Reid has basically had a padded practice. He's had one non-padded practice since we last did our episode.
As it should be.
Guy's a maniac. But
what's funny, just real quick, what's funny is everyone's kind of getting up in arms about that. Like, that's the way it was my entire tenure with Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
After the latest CBA, whatever it was, 2020, 2021, that's when things started to switch. But, like, we always had a full week. We only got one off day per week, and we had 3 pads, and then, a helmet's 10, 10, 10, and then 2 more days of pads. So this is just reverting back to, like, 5, 6, 7 years ago. This isn't reverting back like 20 years to the Junction Boys and glory days. So, like, it's kind of funny that everyone's talking about this being like such a difficult camp.
It is a far cry from last year's camp, which felt a little bit more like modern, I guess, in terms of scheduling. They didn't have the rookies and the quarterback start. There was a little bit more, I guess, a buffer based on the calendar as to when they played their first preseason game and when they could start training camp. Because, again, I think sometimes I have to remind myself, like, they were coming off a Super Bowl. So you have a little bit more time than you were as a team who did not make the postseason. But, yes, in terms of the fit and the role, Mitch, I get the sense that, like, to your point, could he be someone who could take on tight ends? Could he be more of a depth piece for your defensive line? And we know Spags likes to do this. And it's fascinating because Chris would always like to rush more from the outside if given his chance, right? So depending on how much snaps does Ashton Gelati play, how many snaps does R. Mason Thomas play opposite of George? Well, on maybe 2, 3 third downs, I would like to be on the outside. I'd like to be rushing whatever tackle it is, knowing that I'm going to get a better shot at having a one-on-one. If that happens, is Emmanuel Ogbah someone that you could put on the interior, much like they did with Charles Omenihu? Now, I don't know if the success will be the same or if it'll be similar to what Mike Dana did in the 2023 season, which I think was very underrated. His ability to move along with Chris Jones so that they could sort of set up certain matchups that they wanted at certain times of the game.
He like got paid primarily off the production of playing 3-tech on third downs.
Yes.
And then they stopped playing him there the next 2 years. It was the weirdest thing.
Anyway. Well, I think part of it was because he got hurt in 2024, and then they never, to your point, went back to it, which was, somewhat odd at the time. But hey, Omar Omenlot still, weeks away from coming off the PUP list. As I said earlier, maybe we shouldn't expect anything from him until like October. As of right now, you only have 3 interior linemen that you really trust. One of them wants to play on the edge, as I mentioned earlier, in Chris Jones. So he gives them some flexibility to do that. I know they were, when Ashton Gelati was practicing, putting him on the inside at times. There was even one day where they let him play at strong side linebacker, which was hilarious. I don't know if they'll do that much once he comes back, but at least there's plausible possibilities for him. And it's just a matter of, like, can you be someone that we can rely on if a guy has an injury or two during the course of the year? Or, hey, I've been playing most of the snaps. Can you just give me like a snap or 2 off? Can we just not have slippage at that position? So it makes sense. He's a veteran player. You would think, and maybe this is the Chiefs' thought process, is like, with our system, some of the interior flexibility, a reduced role, even maybe more so than he had a year ago, because I still would prioritize playing all the young guys. Maybe that production slightly bumps because he's only being asked to play in this sort of style, and there's not a ton of burden placed upon him on a down-to-down basis.
What's interesting though is from what I saw in kind of some of the clips you've seen, I feel like FAU is actually doing a pretty good job inside rushing. Mm-hmm. So I feel like to slot then Emmanuel in there as well, I feel like FAU is kind of in that like Dana Omenahu role, that he's the defensive end that's going to go inside and kind of kick in. So obviously having a guy that can kind of go anywhere along the line, smart enough to know where to go, to run the right stunts, all those things, it's a benefit to the group. But I feel like FAU is going to be that guy this year because he's actually looked really good in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were at practice yesterday, Mitch. So I'd love to know any takeaways that you got from that. But yeah, with the addition of Emmanuel Ogbah being able to rotate or kick these guys inside, it's interesting because I was looking at this unofficial depth chart that the Chiefs dropped. I understand you don't need to read too much into it, but right now, defensive tackle 4 right now on the roster is Marcus Harris. Respectfully, I don't know. I didn't really know who that was. But it's because Omar Norman Lott would eventually come back and be that 4th one.
Yep.
So I'll be curious to see if he, like you're suspecting, Nate, potentially starts the season on PUP or short-term IR. How many, if they're going 4 defensive tackles and then having an extra defensive end, or what exactly that's going to look like. And then I always look for context clues with the Chiefs because it was like, Mansour Delane wasn't practicing, they signed Snead. Well, they tried to ramp up Gelati. He's not practicing. Now they sign Ogbah. So I'm just hoping that with Gelati, the hamstring is more minor because, they can linger. Right. But we don't really have a lot of buffer for that in the defensive end room. Gelati with an injury, with Ethan Downs already with the ACL, combined with some other, just the room being thin, I think, just in general.
Yeah, I mean, from what I saw, I do think there's some good players, especially on the interior. I mean, not gonna lie, I didn't know who everybody was, once you get down to D tackle 4 and beyond, but saw some stuff. I mean, I think, a couple of guys that I was like, it looks like he can move pretty well. Got some explosiveness. It's a little easier to see maybe the traits when you're only there for a day and you're looking at one-on-ones. I mean, it's impossible to see anything from the sideline when you're on the field level in the team period. So, I mean, I couldn't really tell you too much, and I was looking at the O-line perspective of it, not the D-line perspective. So, but I thought there were some, defensive tackles that flashed a little bit, guys who weren't, Chris and Peter and Cyrus. So I do think, got some traits to work with, got some guys that Joe Cullen seems to like. And then, defensive end wise, getting a little bit more depth is not the worst thing. But it was fun to be there. It was fun to watch. I mean, finally got to see Benson in person, and he's a big dude. He's really strong. That was kind of cool to see how much, force he can generate and kind of his movement skills in person. And it's nice to watch them do it. That's always my biggest takeaway. It's fun to watch them do it and not have to be out there myself.
What are your guys' takeaways of Trey Smith missing 4 days with the hip, which I don't know how serious that is or not. The specialist thing makes me a little nervous, but I don't know. But what are your thoughts on, you have this, what we thought was a right tackle battle going on between Khalil Benson, Jalen Moore. Ever since Trey Smith has been out, though, Khalil Benson has been at right guard. He had 1,000 snaps at right guard in college, so I get it. But if there's a right tackle battle and he's an undrafted rookie swimming in the playbook and all this stuff, is it not counterintuitive to some extent to not keep him out there? Like, what is your guys' thoughts about Benson being at right guard and then Jalen Moore being at right tackle the last 4 practices?
I think it's twofold. On one hand, they want to keep giving Benson as many first-team reps as they absolutely can, and so it is a natural, transition to go from tackle to guard if need be, I guess, because of that experience in college. The other thing, too, is I'm not thrilled if I'm Hunter Norzad. I'm just not. Like, I'm not thrilled if I'm Mike Caliendo, someone who's played in the NFL before, someone who's had positive moments that, okay, like, I don't know, based on my eyes so far, who is the backup interior offensive lineman number 1. Like, I don't know who that is. And so I think what we're seeing is a coaching staff really prioritize, like, trying to get the most out of Benson possible and just see, like, hey, let's see how your brain works today. Let's see if your assignment's sound. Hey, this is cool. Here's Chris Jones. Godspeed. And there was a couple times where I said, why'd you? I mean, but this will prepare him for the season. Like we've talked about before, like there's really no one quite like Chris. And there was moments where it was like, oh my God, Chris is just like flashing in front of all of us. But Andy Reid said yesterday, like, this is going to be a great experience regardless of whether or not he starts the season or he is your top guy, whether it's at guard or at tackle, especially on the right side. So the struggle I have is, I guess if Trey Smith has a minor hip thing, I don't necessarily want to put him out there on Saturday against the Los Angeles Rams. That seems unnecessary. But also, like, I guess we're going to see Benson start Saturday's preseason opener at right guard, and then I guess kick out the tackle when it's the second string offensive line would be my guess. But I was really looking forward to him, like, being next to Trey Smith, and it just doesn't look like that is probably going to be the case, even though we are led to believe that there's nothing really serious with Trey Smith.
Yeah, I had a different thought that I thought they would rotate those guys a little bit, that like every day they would flip. So Jalen would be right guard, Benson would stay at right tackle, and they'd kind of go back and forth each day. I've been surprised that they haven't done that. So it does seem like if Trey were to go down, potentially, Benson is just the guy who's going to be the right guard. Because again, I think this also shows that they're not entirely certain who the right tackle is going to be. Because if you had an idea that Benson was probably going to end up being that guy, then you would want Jalen to be kind of the backup at the next four positions. You wouldn't want, Khalil to be the guy that would necessarily be there at right guard if Trey were to go down. So I think it does also inform us, you talked about the cookie crumbs and trying to figure out how the Chiefs do things. I feel like it does kind of inform us that they're not entirely sure who the right tackle is going to be, and it still is a bit of a competition. But to Nate's point, they want him out there. They want him with the one unit. They want to have him hearing Pat's cadence, the way he talks, Creed at the line of scrimmage, going up against, Chris and Peter and Tonga. And so it is interesting, how they've done this, and just trying to, I guess, accelerate the timeline of, hey, you're going to be with that first group kind of regardless of how we do things. Because, I mean, you guys talked about, like, how does Hunter feel? How does Caliendo feel? Like, part of it's, like, probably not the best, but also you got to play better. Like, for the most part, things are always solved by playing better and showing the coaches you can do it. But I feel like for maybe backup interior O-linemen, I talked about the idea that Jalen Moore, you wouldn't just say, oh, we feel comfortable with him in right tackle, so we don't need to give him right tackle 1 rep, so we're going to play him with the second unit. We're going to flip him, left side one day, right side the other. Like, it doesn't really work like that when you're a starter. They just, like, know what you have. So here, be a super backup and change roles every day. I think if you're the backup interior lineman, you've been on the team for, 3, 4, 5 years. They obviously, Caliendo has played, a decent amount of football now on the field. They know exactly what they're getting in him. So they don't necessarily need to see that guy at right guard. Maybe, Hunter, they don't feel quite as good at. So they're just like, well, he's probably not going to be the primary guy in. Anyway, it might be Caliendo, kind of regardless. So in that sense, it does make sense that Benson would be the right guard and they would leave those guys on the second unit, because they don't really need to see those guys with, right guard 1 duty. But it was fun to see Khalil, because he's in there and he's not afraid of Chris. A lot of guys get scar tissue after having to practice against that guy over time, but he doesn't have that yet. He is just going after him and throwing his hands and being aggressive. And, his best attribute seems to be being big and strong and being able to move people. And he tries to do that every single play. So I think from that element, it's been cool to see. And, going against Chris is maybe not the best thing for you to do every day, because he's so good, and 2, he's just so different. My thing with Chris has always been, you throw your hands against him and he either swipes them or he does the Hamilton and lifts them and you lose. You don't throw your hands because you're worried about that stuff, and he puts his hands in your chest and he walks you back to the quarterback and you lose. So it's kind of a pick your poison, lose. Use my hands, lose. Don't use my hands, lose. Yeah. And so you're going against that guy every single day in practice. You start doing kind of crazy, funky things to defeat him specifically, which takes you away a little bit from just like repping your base fundamentals. They're going to work against everybody else that you'll see. But it does seem like, again, Khalil is just out there playing ball, shooting his hands, being physical. And, Spags, I will say one of my other takeaways is, like, these guys do not see base defenses. Spags is doing all sorts of fronts, blitzes, twists, games. So it's not even like he's just out there getting reps against a 4-3 front with Chris at 3 tech shooting the B gap. He's seeing a ton of stuff, guys going in every direction, different fronts. You're almost having a game plan every single day from the, O-line and quarterback perspective when you get into those blitz drills and the red zone stuff. So I think having him out there with that first unit, like we said, in either of those spots is incredibly valuable. when it does seem like they're pretty sold that he's going to be, if not an immediate contributor, like a likely contributor when the first guy goes down and likely into next year.
That's a really good, like, I didn't think of it like that, in the sense of the more reps he gets with the first team offense in general, the better. Hearing Mahomes going up against the best of the best, whether it's at guard or tackle. In my mind, it's just easiest if Jalen Moore is like kind of the secretive, he already won the right tackle battle, so we're just, as a backup lineman in Benson, give him all the reps that you can, because that's the name of the game as a backup, right? Having that versatility. But yeah, just getting all those reps with the first team in general, proving valuable for Benson, whether or not he ends up being guard if Trey with the hip can't practice or play, or whatever ends up being, even if it's at right tackle. Yeah, very interesting indeed. What do you think about Josh Simmons? I'm going back to, like, we haven't talked since last Tuesday, so there's been a little bit going on, but we saw Josh Simmons yeet Tyreek Smith halfway across the field in the drill. He has also done some snatch trap stuff where you've seen guys around the feet of Mahomes. I understand maybe to an extent in that 1v1 he was frustrated. Maybe you wouldn't see him do something like that in a game. But Mitch, I know you had some thoughts on that. I would love to kind of hear your insight, just because as a fan, I'm like, yo, that was sick. He just yeeted that guy. But obviously that's probably not the best thing to do in a game. And I know you were kind of sharing your thoughts as to why over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's not something he's going to do in a game. It's not something that really any offensive lineman does or should do. That was also coming off of, I think, a few scuffles. It might have been that last day in the 6-day string of, 5 padded practices and your first true week in training camp. So it's like, I get it. I understand the frustrations. I didn't see anything from any of the videos that 57 was the guy involved on defense. I saw, that Felix was the guy that Kingsley was going after.
Kingsley, yeah.
And I will say, from what I saw, absolutely Kingsley's fault, not FAU's fault at all. FAU bowled Kingsley back. He kind of pulled up at the end to make sure Mahomes was protected. And then Coach Heck teaches a violent shove at the end of every play. And Kingsley gave Felix a violent shove up in the head and neck area. And he's probably like, dude, what the hell? I just pulled up to not like hurt the quarterback, and you're going to go ahead and shove me after I beat you. And that's what happened there. So, yeah, that specific rep of Josh throwing a guy, like, I don't get any value from that. I don't see any real value from it. Like, yeah, maybe it's great that he can like do that and has the upper body strength. I've described it, the way the Chiefs do one-on-ones, they put a towel down on the ground. It's at 5.5 yards. Most quarterbacks start at 5.5 yards and then take a step or 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 back from that point. And most other teams, when they do one-on-one, they have a guy catching a snap and or faking catching a snap and then taking a little bit of a drop and being a quarterback in the pocket. The Chiefs have always done it a little bit shallower. Coach Heck just likes guys to kind of start the engagement earlier. He doesn't want oversetting. He wants guys to be firm. And so having that quarterback at a much shallower, or the landmark at a much shallower spot, kind of forces the offensive tackles especially to not overset in that drill, because in a game, if the guy kind of goes inside and he's at 5.5 yards and I can wall him off, that's probably a win. Pat just slides in the pocket, or he can, kind of stay in there comfortably. In that one-on-one pass rush drill, that would technically be a loss if the guy can get to the towel. So in that particular rep, he's behind the towel when he gets thrown, but it's like also at 7.5, 8 yards, which is the standard depth of quarterbacks in every single pocket, except if you're Joe Flacco and you take an 11-step drop every single time. So yeah, that would have been right into Pat's knee, and he would probably be having another ACL injury and then surgery. So that's just a frustration thing. That's not like the technique. The actual snatch trap is the technique that Josh does a decent amount against Karlaftis. You see it against some other guys. I've talked about that. It's not a bad technique. It is a good technique if used properly, if used in the right way. My thing is, you kind of have to give up some ground to get the guy down. There are cases where you can stonewall him or do it quick enough where you don't really have to back up at all. He just kind of falls straight down. Those are rare. Those are more difficult. Josh is still a guy, even if he's not a traditional puncher, he will kind of get his hands on, the shoulders or around, the upper part of the guy's pads. And that takes a little bit of time, and then you got to snatch them and try to throw them on the ground. That all takes time. He's probably pushing on you a little bit. You're backing up. for the most part, again, you're giving a little ground. If you don't do it perfect, he's kind of just like ducked his head and he's still driving forward, could push you back into the quarterback. It just gets a little tight to the quarterback. So when is that technique valid? When is it great? Like if a guy is running at you and he's trying to really long arm you more than bull rush you, but either one, if he's just like his head's really low, you can see it coming from a mile away. Like, yeah, you just dump him immediately. He falls down. Great technique. You're nowhere near the quarterback. It's also great if you're a very wide setter or you take wide splits. Deion Dawkins with Buffalo takes the widest split from any tackle in the league. He also is like right up on the line of scrimmage, which is kind of interesting. But Dawkins is a big like snatch trap or chop guy. Well, he creates a lot of width in his initial alignment, and then he also tends to set out a little bit more. And he's also like, we'll say conservatively 330 pounds. So if a guy is pushing on him, he's got just a little more mass to him than a Josh Simmons does, regardless of strength and explosiveness and all that stuff. He just has literal mass that Josh doesn't have. A guy like Tyron Smith, is a Hall of Famer. I went to the O-line masterminds thing in Dallas this year. They were showing some Tyron Smith clips. I was like, we do not teach Tyron Smith. We can watch, we can appreciate. But Tyron was built in a lab, 6'6", literally like 36 and a half inch arms, freakish. So he could use both hands, punch, and still have his hands on you as the defensive end is long arming and like turning his shoulder and extending. And so he would lock a guy up and then just like snatch him straight to the ground. And he would always be kind of squared up really to, line of scrimmage, but also not really giving up any depth to the quarterback. He would start the engagement, be in total control, snatch straight to the ground. So those are the cases where it's a great technique when the defensive lineman is just so on his, over his toes that you can get him down immediately. When you create a lot of width, whether it's with alignment, whether it's with your pass set, when you have the engagement locked up, he's extended and you're just like, screw you, I'm going to put you in the ground. Boom. Just using it for like normal pass sets when, you're setting maybe a little more vertical than horizontal, later in the rush, once you've already given up, a little bit of pressure on a bull rush or something like that at the top of the arc. I've seen a few of those clips where the guy's already doing the arc and he's already maybe, gonna lose his feet. That's where it gets muddy. That's where it gets close to the quarterback's legs. And it's dangerous, regardless of what your quarterback's health is. But obviously with Pat coming off the injury, it's even more dangerous and more worrisome. And that's the last thing he's going to want to feel. Like we've also seen with him, he has a freakish ability to feel things on the football field, whether that's space downfield, whether that's offensive line, space in the pocket, all that stuff. Is that the thing that he wants to feel? A guy getting snatch trapped, right off his left side? Probably not. Again, if it's wide enough away, if he doesn't feel it, that's great. But once it gets close, that's when bad things start to happen. So yeah, all those things, it's again, not a bad technique. I wouldn't tell Josh to like not use it or to take it out of his repertoire, but I have other techniques I prefer. And the cool thing with going to practice is watching him, getting to talk to him, trying to figure out what he's thinking and, what he's seeing out there. And so he's a fun guy to watch and he's, going to keep ascending.
This is why I love having a former player on here, because it's just what Mitch just said is proof there is so much to this game. There's so many layers to the game of football that the average fan, and I'm lumping myself in that category, it's hard to grasp all that goes into the game, all that goes into the prep. And insane.
Well, O-line in particular, I feel like is its own world. I mean, every position group is, but
right.
I feel like O-line kind of has intricacies that other positions don't. And like receiver DB, I mean, they're way more technical than I think people give them credit for, and the hand fighting. Like we saw the Steve Smith clip with Thornton and talking about the different ways he releases. Like that stuff's kind of cool, but also there's an element of like, I could probably figure that out, or I understand what they're trying to do. With O-line stuff, like unless you've kind of been around it or been in the world or kind of heard the way guys think, it's something that a lot of fans I think don't have the appreciation for. You just that we have to stop the guy in front of us. You just figure we're big and fat and slow and we'll get in the way. But for the most part, it's extremely technical, and the defensive line has really spurred that on. Those guys have gotten so good at their job.
So good.
Most teams have at least the front four, if not, a few guys off the bench who are quality pass rushers, and they're not just quick, they're not just strong, they're skilled, they know how to use their hands. So as they have gotten better and more athletic and more freakish, and the league is passing more, we've had to, counter that. And they might be a little bit ahead of us these days. But yeah, it's a very fun, nuanced, skilled position, and I think a lot more goes on than the average person realizes.
I guess the question for me, Mitch, as it relates to Josh, because we know he can do it and he demonstrated it at certain points last year really well. I almost want to think of it like a pitcher, like that's obviously not going to be his fastball, and I'm guessing you don't really want it to be the changeup either. It's just how often do you want him to throw like this knuckle curveball within like how many sets you're doing or how many dropbacks I guess the quarterback has in a game, because it could vary as well. You go from a 40 dropback game to a 60 dropback game if you play in overtime. I just wonder, would you want to see that part of his tools like less than 5 times a game? Was it just something that you just want to make sure like the other guy is aware of it?
Yeah, so my thing is, for the most part, it's a reactionary technique that is used against the extreme version of a guy, again, with too much weight forward. And for the most part, defensive linemen are really skilled that they're not going to have a ton of weight forward.
Right.
They're not going to be leaning. And so I would say, a few times a game, you kind of catch them in a bad spot, you catch them off guard. Where I get worried is that, like, hands are on the shoulders from Josh's perspective. He starts the engagement, grabs the guy, and he feels pressure, and his instinct is going to be drop. Drop. And, if we want to go down this path, when I was playing, how I would study guys, how I would chart guys, I learned this a little bit from Joe Thomas in Cleveland, but I would chart all the rushes, and I would chart every individual type of rush that guy gave and also the frequency of it. You're going against a guy like Von Miller, say you've got 23 true pass plays in a game. Everyone knows about, kind of the speed up the edge, that ghost move, and the spin. And the spin's kind of like his signature move.
Yeah.
Well, he only does it once, maybe twice a game. And so you start to look at how often he just rushes, long arms, does some other, thing off a long arm. And it's like, well, it's over half the time. And then you chart, Khalil Mack when he was younger, long arm 95% of the time. Guy like Joey Bosa, even, long arm and the stab and the swipe from there. You realize how many moves come off of either a long arm or some sort of bull rush from the get-go. And so if your general feeling is like, once I feel pressure on me, I'm going to back up and snatch him to the ground. Well, that's what you're going to feel 50% of the time or more. And so that would be the worry, is that it becomes the primary technique because it works and he's good at it and he's very strong with his upper body. But you just have to build in those other things. And with the way, most teams set, Deion Dawkins is the outlier in terms of his ability to align that wide and then get even wider from there. Like, you're typically worried about, TEs or ETs or different games, all the new blitz packages that teams are throwing at you. So you would want it to be the knuckle curve. You want it to be the changeup. You don't necessarily want it to be the go-to unless you're just elite at it and it can be far enough away from the quarterback. But again, the worry is that becomes the thing you go to. My technique that I prefer was the Hamilton. Now I prefer it in part because I was pretty good at it. But the Hamilton has 2 main benefits. For people that don't know what that is when they put their arm on you and you basically grab like the forearm or the wrist and you lift it. And you try to get it off your chest. We've seen Chris do that from the defense line perspective. You see all this times he goes in with 2 hands and the offensive lineman, like his hands go flailing. That's a Hamilton. Chris does to the offensive lineman. So I like to use that against defense linemen. Again, they're being taught, hands inside, start the engagement.
Up the chest.
They're starting with long arm or bull rush. So it's a great technique because it works against what you see a lot. And the 2 primary benefits, number 1 is it takes his momentum, and instead of going at you, it redirects it up. So it's a way to stop power and stop bull rush without having to like physically stop it. You're just redirecting momentum up. It's way easier than stopping a 300-pound guy running at you. Just make it go up instead of going into you. And the other thing is, if you think about lifting something, it forces your body usually to go down. So it kind of puts you into a more seated position. Your hips are under you. You're stronger. You're mobile. You're able to move. So that's a technique that I think has 2 great benefits. Offensive line, better position. Defensive line, worse position, less power. Where the snatch or the snatch trap tends to put offensive line a little more, weight forward as you're doing that. tends to give up a little bit more ground. So that's why my preference is the Hamilton, the lift versus the snatch trap.
Yeah.
And I just kind of went down the O-line rabbit hole there.
It's great. Honestly,
welcome to my life.
It's honestly great because playing at his weight right now, I think right now I think he told us, maybe it was last week, all the days running together, but I think Josh Simmons told us, hey, maybe I'll be around 300 pounds. We know he was lighter than that in the offseason period of it all. And at the same time, it's like, well, he's so athletic enough. Do you want him to gain even more weight? I don't know, but like if you're not having as much weight as like the average tackle, you are giving up something. Whereas again, you don't necessarily want the snatch to become the default. And also at the same time, too, the more you do it, I know the more the referee behind the play is also identifying it as well for a potential hold.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing is refs have whatever reason that's just a thing that they call for holding now. Like kind of by definition. It's not holding because you're not holding him. You're
not holding. You're putting him down.
But also, like, kind of by definition, like you are taking him from the most part from a position of power and strength. Like you can't do that technique unless you basically have him fronted up, and unless you're in a position where you're strong enough to throw them to the ground. So holdings, for the most part, if your feet are winning the block and you are kind of between the quarterback and the defender. You basically don't get called for holding. Like that's, I mean, you want to go back to the first Super Bowl with Fish and then the Wasp play and all the Niners fans are calling holding. Like, yeah, Fish has his arm draped over Bosa, but Fish is moving his feet. He is not impeding Bosa's rush because his arm is, on the outside. He is moving with Bosa and staying in front of him from a body perspective. So like, that's where I think fans don't realize that for the most part, holding is more about the feet and your relationship to the quarterback and the rusher than it is about the actual hands. So if I'm able to grab a guy up top, be between my, him and the quarterback and dump him to the ground, I'm kind of in control of the rush the whole time. So why is this now being called holding? I don't know. It's almost like, big hits across the middle. They hear it, they see it, flag's got to come out. That's like the second they see a defensive lineman go to the ground and offensive lineman kind of standing over him. The assumption is that there had to have been a holding in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's another thing that once game action happens, you're going to have to see how are the refs calling it. If it's, your go-to counter move against strong guys and bull rush and power, but you're getting called for a holding a game because that's what refs are seeing. That's no good. We've dealt with our offensive tackle who gets a bunch of penalties. We don't want that. So that would have to be an adjustment, and that's a great point by Nate.
I was chuckling because you're talking about Nick Bosa in the Super Bowl, and I think there's like a dedicated account that somebody started a while back that Nick Bosa was held in Super Bowl 54 or something, and they post something every day.
Tell me that I
admire the
held
bit.
all Super Bowl, and I was like, number one, I had one snap with Nick Bosa lined up across from me, and we ran an option, which means I let him go, and they optioned off of him. I didn't touch him the entire game unless he ran into me from the other side. And I still get Niners fans in my mentions. Oh, you held all game. You held Bosa. So, yeah, they haven't let that one go.
Well, we got more to talk about. I do want to talk about a little bit of the running back room, Nate, if you have a little on that, only because I feel like outside of Kenneth Walker, reports have been a little quiet. And Mitch, you were at camp too. So any takeaways you have in the running back room, obviously talk about the wide receiver room. Rice spoke to the media today for the first time since rehabbing and his stint in jail. There's no way to go around that. He's
in jail.
The first time since serving 30 days in jail.
Yeah, he was in jail.
And rehabbing in and out during that time. So we'll definitely talk about all that. But first, of course, got to shout out the season-long partner of the channel. Big reason why we're able to do what we're doing at Chiefs Collective. That is going to be Prize Picks, the #1 sports picks app in America. You can access this in almost every single state. I know Kansas and Missouri is good. California, Texas. There's a lot of others. Super easy to use. You can, just what you can see on screen here, choose more or less on individual stats for a game. You could do season-long stuff. You could also, if you want to pick a team winning or a fight, a UFC fight, a winner, you can do all of that as well. And for this one, this is just week 1 again. I have... what do we have going? What did we cook up for this one? We got Kenneth Walker more than a touchdown, receiving or rushing. That feels pretty safe to me. Mahomes more than 243.5 passing yards. I don't know, but I kind of hope so. And then Cortland Sutton's more on 49.5 receiving yards. I feel like the secondary might give up some big plays a little bit early on against the secondary or against any team, but this is the biggest receiving threat that I think they have in the first 4 weeks of the season, the Broncos. If everybody can stay healthy, obviously, and then we'll talk more about this after this, but the Chiefs cornerback room, some of that depends on who can get out there too. But the biggest thing from here is if you play just $5 your first 5, you can get 150 in lineups. If you win, just use code HMA when you sign up. It's code HMA at sign up to get $150 in bonus lineups if you win your first $5 or more lineup. Link is in the description down below. Most importantly, make sure to use code HMA. Bam. Okay, Broncos are coming up, but that's kind of a worry for another day. We have preseason getting closer. Wide receiver room, Cyrus Allen hype, we'll get there, but running back room, outside of Kenneth Walker, is there anything else to note here? I feel like Amari DeMercado is your third down back, and then what do you have from? I know you have Emmett Johnson kind of working. He was number 3 on their unofficial depth chart. Not sure I'm reading a ton into that. Brashard Smith at 4. What do you guys make of the running back room, just kind of the way it is right now?
Well, I love the fact that DeMercado clearly is the best pass blocker, not named Kenneth Walker. That's been clear through the linebackers and safeties versus running back drill in terms of pass protection. It's so funny. Like they spent so much time really cultivating and stretching how far Kenneth Walker can be as a receiver, right? That they have done that less, I feel like, with DeMercado and Brashard Smith, who played most of his college career at receiver. It's cool that they're throwing the ball a lot to Emmett Johnson when he is on the field during the 11-on-11 reps. He's mostly been with the 2s or the 3s, depending on how that day's reps get distributed. But I like the fact that DeMercado has the speed that I think can match up as a sort of off-pace changeup to Kenneth Walker. I still think Brashard Smith can probably make his biggest impact, at least early on in the season, on special teams. You will see him do that on Saturday against the Rams. But for Emmett Johnson, I just think this is a huge learning year, and it's fascinating to me that he has gotten plenty of attention from Eric Bieniemy, who has returned back to the team yesterday after a 2-week absence and has largely spent his time getting on Emmett Johnson. It's been quite the scene. But yeah, I mean, at least I'm sure the best part in one way for you, Mitch, is that they're just doing so many screens each day that you can tell that that's going to hopefully be a focal point back within the offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of the offense that is surprising. It hasn't been good the last few years with Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney leading screens. It's typically your 3 interior guys that get out on screens, all great players. But the screen game just hasn't been there. Obviously, we know what the running back position has looked like, so might be a case of just the guy wasn't the right guy, and Walker looks fantastic in that phase. I do think for the other guys, that's where the preseason is huge from the running back perspective, because you can do a lot of stuff in practice, but like you can't run through tackles. You can't show physicality in that same way. You can't flash, a burst through the hole in quite the same way. You can't run away from, defenders who are full on chasing you and high stepped on the last 5 yards into the end zone. So I think for that's one of the position units that's like, oh, wow, like that's a guy that is showing something.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like Darwin Thompson, little dude, and we got to the preseason and he started to truck dudes and run physical, and you're like, oh man, like we might actually have something here. And he didn't have the most playing time, but was able to kind of show out and show the team some stuff. So I think for those guys, it's going to be less probably role specific in the preseason. Not necessarily going to be like, hey, you're a third down back and you're a power guy. Like you're going to be able to see them in their theoretical roles for the upcoming season, but also what can we do on first and second down? Can you take a 2nd and 7 run that's a little bit murky? Can you get us 3.5, 4 yards, get to 3rd and 3? That's where I think there's huge value from that position. And then also again, the special teams and what are they showing on special teams, and typically you're gonna have to kind of double dip there. So that position in particular, I kind of feel like 4 guys are gonna make the team, because I feel like those are pretty guys that are pretty set right now, but you don't know until they get out there. Carson Steele, obviously, had that incredible, preseason a couple years ago, and like we can kind of make jokes about it now, but also it was a great preseason and probably helped him make the team and lasted a while, and that stuff matters. Like there are stories like that of guys across pretty much every team, and that's a position where it's just so easy to shine and show what you can do when you have the ball in your hands. So it is going to be exciting to see them. And the stuff that we won't get to see is the stuff that EV's yelling at him about, and the details and the footwork, and are they pushing the line, are they setting up the O line? Like we're not going to really be able to see that. We just kind of see the flash part of it. The team will be able to kind of figure out the substance, but it will be fun to watch. And that position is always one that has an outsized role in preseason games because they do have the ball in their hands so much.
This room is so upgraded. I feel like just compared to last year, Emmett Johnson's in a really good situation here to learn, to get yelled at every day by EB. Like you're learning behind Kenneth Walker, who everybody just says he's doing everything that he possibly can to help bring the running back room up with him. And they're all harping on the little details, but pass pro. I feel like all of them are talking about the importance of that. And then when you hear Mitch talk about the complexity that it is being an offensive lineman, and that's not even talking about blitzes that are coming and being able to recognize that. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch for sure come preseason. What about, unless you guys have more thoughts on that, what about the wide receiver room? They're getting a little healthier, so Worthy's been limited the last 2 days, but that's better than not participating as he's working back from the shoulder sprain. Cyrus Allen is working back. I know he was working at practice when you were there, Mitch. Rice is also working back. He spoke to the media today, and I know it was the first time he spoke since everything kind of went down. So there was a lot of difficult questions in there, whether you wanted to face it or not. And for me, with Rice, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. I really hope he just really does learn. I feel like we've heard it the past couple off seasons. Hey, this was a learning lesson, and I'm going to use it to, better myself. And that's ultimately the hope for me, whether or not he has a long future with the Chiefs. They extend him after this year. He goes elsewhere. You've got a lot of life left. You're a dad. You got 2 kids.
Yeah.
So my hope is what he said at the end of his presser. Like, I have a huge responsibility being a dad, and that's a big priority in my life. And a part of learning and growing from that is being the best father you can be off the field, and then the best player and teammate you can be on the field while staying out of trouble. So, state of the wide receiver room. What say you guys?
For Rashee Rice specifically, we could ask as many questions as we want. I thought we tried to talk about the rehab of it all within the midst of the 30-day jail sentence that he had between mid-May and mid-June. He's clearly looked not necessarily rusty, but he clearly looks, I think you said it correctly last week, Mitch, he clearly looks a little hesitant about like fully opening up. I think change of direction has been somewhat difficult for him based on what we've seen in practice, but there's been times where he looks like himself. And so you're trying to glean as much as you can. I asked him directly what he wanted to improve most for this season, and he said it was something that had nothing to do with him with the ball in his hands, which I actually thought was very interesting because there were times last year where if the play call wasn't specifically designed for him, he did not give maximum effort. So clearly that's been a teaching point brought to him.
He said that twice. Something to that effect twice in that presser.
Because it was evident based on when you watched film that he wasn't as productive as he needed to be, or he wasn't necessarily aware that, like, hey, just because the play is not there for you, Pat might still throw you the ball based on whatever the circumstances are. Like, please be ready to, like, you're on the field for a reason. You're a really good player. Like, demonstrate that. It's nice to see that Cyrus Allen is pretty good in pads. We needed to see that in pads, but he looks pretty good still. So he'll be someone you should circle for Saturday's game as well. I think the best receiver so far, kind of by default, and we don't talk about him a ton, is Tyquan Thornton, because he has somehow become Mr. Reliable all of a sudden. He's been at every practice. He's done really well to be a deep threat and a connection with Mahomes. There's been a couple times, and I'm sure you were there yesterday, Mitch, where he threw the ball in the middle between 2 defenders that was just absolutely perfection in a lot of ways. And hopefully by next week, Xavier Worthy comes back. My hope, I think Chiefs fans' hope should be you get through Saturday's game. Hopefully that goes well. You can get more reps from Ashton Gelati. Trey Smith can come back into the fold, and you can get a little bit more in the pads in terms of workload for Xavier Worthy, because those guys, at least from Andy Reid's perspective, he would like those guys to play in one of the last 2 preseason games to get them ready for, obviously, opening night. So there's, I think, better optimism than we've demonstrated before with the receivers. But at the same time, it's like, I just want Rashee Rice to, like, if there was ever a time to just bring it all together, this is kind of it. And so he said, I commend him for saying everything he said today, for being as honest as he wanted to be. I imagine that if you were in jail for 30 days, it would be a reality check. So thank you for acknowledging that. And then, yeah, let's see how well he does in an offense that still needs him to be pretty productive.
Yeah, and I mean, I think way more optimism to your point than last week. I was a little more neutral the first week and very pessimistic last week, but things are looking better. They're mostly out there. They're mostly practicing. I do think we'll see what Cyrus can do. Obviously, Coach Reid's history in Kansas City, rookies do not play a very large role, especially early in the season. Tyreek more second half of the year, Rashee a little bit more second half of the year. Xavier, more of a little bit gadget guy the first year. So what can he tolerate? What can he handle? What position is he going to play early in the season? The risk is, I don't know if you can say Rashee's injury prone, but coming into a year where he's not, fully healthy, starting training camp, you worry about flare-ups, you worry about, little things coming. Obviously, Xavier, I think we can say at this point, is not the most, injury-free, and smaller things can add up because of his frame.
Yep.
And so it's great to have them out there. It's great to kind of see what it's starting to look like. Guys are getting open and he's finding places to throw the ball. And it seems like a lot of trust in Thornton, as we said, obviously a ton of trust in Kelsey. Seems like he kind of trusts Cyrus. Xavier, I feel like they haven't really had that connection on the field that we like to see. So can they kind of work through that? But is the receiver room like so role specific that if guys do get injured, it kind of throws everything off? Because essentially this becomes like a Cyrus Allen question. Like, what can he handle? Which roles can he play? Because again, Rashee, more of the slot guy, zone beater, not going to be the man coverage guy. Xavier, burner, gadget guy, can still run routes. Maybe a little bit of a man coverage beater. You put him in some stack releases, get him in motion, and he can defeat man coverage. Travis, whatever role he plays, that's his role. Tyquan is a little bit more of kind of the deep threat, showing his ability to be a full receiver, but obviously great chemistry with Pat on throws down the field, throws over the middle, a little bit, more middle to intermediate to deep. So if guys start getting hurt, like, are the backups going to be able to fill in at any spot, or is everyone just like, this is my role, this is my spot, this is my role, this is my spot? Right. And that's where most teams, to be fair, don't have those answers, like a ton of them. But I do feel like the Chiefs are very hyper specific that, like, Rashee is this kind of receiver, X is this kind of receiver, Thornton is this kind. And so if Cyrus is able to show versatility that he can do some X stuff, some Z stuff, some slot stuff, then, he can be third or fourth receiver in general. But if a guy goes down, he can jump in and play a little bit of the Rashee role in zone coverage. He could jump in and be the man beater if X goes down. So I think that's what will be fun to see, kind of what the production looks like on the field, because, he is doing it in pads. He looks great. He, is kind of quelling all the, it's only, OTAs, it's only against backups. Like, I think those things are kind of out the window. Like, he's pretty legit receiver. How good he can be from the get-go, don't know, but way ahead of a typical fifth round guy and looking more like, second round, first round type receiver. So yeah, pretty optimistic this week.
The issue, to your point, Mitch, and I don't know if you've unlocked something in me, but it's like, because they are, I think in a lot of ways, so role specific, I'm like, well, there's not 17 games where they're all going to be out there. So, like
Kenneth Walker,
history suggests you're not going to have your top 3, top 4 guys for all 17 games. You hope to have him for opening night, of course, against a very talented Denver Broncos secondary. But yeah,
which, like, and to cut you off, like, probably the best secondary you're going to see all year. You know, it doesn't really get better. So if at least for one of those, you can almost guarantee that you have all the guys out there, like, that's awesome. Because
that would be great.
You wouldn't want to go into the Denver week with, you know, say Cyrus down and X down, and now you just cannot defeat man coverage.
Right.
And they're just going to play you in man. They're going to rush 5, rush 6. They're not going to care because you got no one to beat them. So that is almost a benefit to play them in week 1, where you can theoretically have most of the room healthy and feeling pretty good.
Because I think Cyrus does translate, at least as of now, to their most potential man beater, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know. But at the same time, you're like, I don't know, man. Like, he's a rookie, and how much will they play him? But also, like, how much will defenses still go off of last year, which is, hey, if it's third down, we can man you up. We'll feel comfortable that the pass rush gets there. Or do teams play a little bit more zone because Kenneth Walker does attract some eyes in terms of the second level and how you can maybe manipulate them under center or from a play action standpoint, where you don't have to be always in a traditional, you know, shotgun drop back situation. It's all connected. It's all fascinating. They still haven't. I know until they do it, I have to say this. They still have not had a 11-on-11 full pad scrimmage rep where they've had their top 3 receivers on the field. So when that happens, hopefully Monday or next week, we'll let you know. But
and to your point, like, okay, so Kenneth Walker, run game, under center, you know, that's going to be an emphasis. What's kind of the goal of that? What's, like, the bigger picture? It's to get defenses out of just being able to go too high and play the shell and, you know, stop the run with, you know, theoretically unfavorable boxes and lack of numbers.
Yep.
But if you're running the ball well and they're saying, all right, well, we got to go single high, we got to bring a safety in the box, we got to play them a little more stout. If the Chiefs don't have guys that can beat man coverage, then you can just play versions of cover 1 all game. And now they're saying, all right, we got our extra guy in the box for Kenneth, and you're not good enough outside to beat us. And that becomes a Coach Reid problem and an EV problem, where then the scheme is going to have to override the individual talent.
Yes.
So that's where the worry would be, like, that they can just drop a safety down and say, all right, we're going to stop, you know, Kenneth in the run game, and we're good being a little bit more risky on the back end playing man coverage because they don't have the guys to do it. So that kind of cat and mouse of, like, what the run game forces the defense to do, but then also, can your guys translate and can it defeat the coverage that you would see if they're playing a little bit more run? To be seen, but it's going to be a fun development.
I cannot wait just for a real preseason game. This offseason has been extremely long. I feel like I could keep talking wide receivers, but we're almost out of time. And somebody said, hey, are these guys even live? Yeah, we're live. I've seen some super chats and stuff come in. We're still trying to manage how to go about all that, but I'll definitely shout you guys out here in a minute. But I will say, it would feel weird not to mention this at all. But I feel like massive news came out yesterday from Brett Veach on Sirius XM radio about Mansour Delane. So he talked shoulder blade, and that was what Spags said even maybe a couple days ago.
Yeah, a couple days ago.
Yeah, so that, and then the expectation is he'll be fully, in theory, he'll be fully cleared for contact at some point next week. That was what Brett Veach said on Sirius XM. Nate, any thoughts on that? And that doesn't necessarily mean he'll instantly be in preseason game 2 or anything like that, but just getting him out there and getting those reps in there as a rookie with all those young guys in the secondary, where Noel Williams is like the starting main guy and he's in year 2. Alohi Gilman, safety, yes, but Spags talked about him today. Even the face of the safety room's new to the system. So how big of news is that to you, and what could that mean going forward if he's able to get cleared for full contact next week?
This is my best interpretation, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I think he said 7 to 8 days. So if I'm supposed to read that literal, that means you're gonna play the Rams without Mansour Delane. You're gonna come back to St. Joe on Monday for a practice. Do you do a scan of his shoulder that Monday morning or Sunday night? How you feeling? Okay, we take those images, we double check them, and I guess that 8 day he could be back to like full pad, full clearance on Tuesday. I guess that's how I'm supposed to take it. I know teams, when they put things out there, it's obviously from an optimistic viewpoint. Like, yeah, 7 to 8 days, which totally means 7 to 8 days. It could be like 2 weeks. It just depends on like the athlete and the medical staff. And again, I think if it's a shoulder,
again, we talked about following the breadcrumbs. Like, he probably got a scan recently that said he was on track. And I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like, Rick and just these medical staffs, they know when you're going to be healthy before you do, like, because they've seen, if I sprain my ankle, that's a sprained ankle. Well, he's seen 40 years of sprained ankles. Like, they have the data, they have the experience. So this is probably an injury that charts out to X amount of time until a fractured bone is fully healed. And we got the scan a few days ago and he's progressing. And so it really should only be 10 more days. And so by the time we have our interview, it's 7 to 8 days. Like, that is kind of hyper specific to say it that specifically from a team that doesn't typically give you hyper specific days or timelines. So I do think this is probably just like straight up. Yeah, it was a 3-month injury or 2 months, whenever you heard it in OTAs. And this is when the bone heals on that kind of injury. And, we speculated a week or two ago, why do you need a yellow jersey as a DB? And I was like, can you not handle like getting a running back, putting a helmet or a shoulder into you? The answer was, yeah, apparently that's literally what happened. Yep. Because if Kenneth Walker came at him and, was physical and tried to just kind of thud off him, like, that would have been terrible for the back of his shoulder where he seems like has a fracture. So yeah, we were like kind of right about that. And, it seems like it's just a bone that needs healing. And once it's healed, then physicality can follow from there. So it's kind of exciting because it does feel like he is just going to be back when he's there and it's just going to be full go. And luckily it hasn't been a lower body thing that he, wouldn't have the stamina or the speed or all those things and doesn't have to work back from that.
Let's say best case scenario, he's in pads early next week. We don't know if he's going to play in the first preseason game. I would imagine at least some reps in the third one. But what are the odds he starts week 1? Let's say best case scenario, he's in full pads, or is this he's still a rookie, 6th overall pick? He's rotating in. Is he starting?
No,
out the gate.
If he's 100% clear, and he even plays one preseason game, like let's say you hold him for the Buccaneers game, and you just want to wait till again let that shoulder heal up or not take on too much contact in like a game setting, you can hold him all the way till the third preseason game against the Seahawks, and then you could play him for the Denver Broncos. Spags may be a little bit specific about like, okay, do we fully want to give him 100% of the snaps? But he's starting. he needs to start. Now there might be some personnel packages, say what you will. Again, that even includes the whole L'Jarius Sneed of it all. Because again, I don't think he's really doing anything until September rolls around anyway. You still have Noah Williams as your cornerback 2. It looks like Chris Roland Wallace is your leading candidate to be the nickel. And yeah, you still have Christian Fulton in the wings if necessary. But yeah, he would have to have a setback for me not to think that he wouldn't start opening night against the Denver Broncos.
I figured that was the answer, but you just never know with Spags. Spags today was like, yeah, we're moving slow. He was pretty blunt about it. He's like, yeah, they need some work back there. Essentially,
I think what's funny is coaches do that sometimes, and then you realize, coach, these guys are tired of looking at each other. They're ready to play another team. Like if you just put another team out there, I bet you they'd look faster to you. But we are really in the grind of camp, and that's a fun back and forth between the players feeling a certain way and the coaching staff being like, give me more.
I do want to shout out real quick because we're monetized for the first time. We got some super chats. Jennifer with the 1571, number 15 and number 71. Congrats on podcast. 3 to all of you. Congrats to Mitch and Brooke Lynn. 2 words.
Is it 2?
Yeah, that's her middle name.
Yes. Okay.
Dang, she was breaking out the middle name too.
Yeah,
I was just making sure.
Check. Yeah.
Yeah. Congrats on the new baby.
Yes.
Hi to Nate Taylor as well. Let's freaking go. We got Judy with the jewels, 1,000 jewels. I think it's like, I don't know what that is. Is it like a super sticker? I don't know what that is. That's new to me, but we'll take jewels. I appreciate that. Mega Chief DeLorean said Uncle Alert. I don't know if he's calling me old, us old, he's old, we're all old. I'm not really sure.
Old. Yeah.
Might just be the triple hairline going on here.
I have no hairline, so I'm not helping y'all. I'm sorry. Red Pill with a 10 said monetizes fast, amazing. Thank you, brother. Love the show. Question. What do you guys think about Tyrann Mathieu visiting, where it might go? He said in training camp, it's easier to be a player than a coach. I feel like most players with money don't really want to be an NFL coach unless it's higher up, but you guys can weigh into that one a little bit more than me.
I mean, yeah, most coaches also tell you if you make enough money, don't be a coach because the lifestyle is not the greatest. You have to love it to do it. But I feel like Tyrann's a guy that probably sees himself like he's got a higher calling to teach and to share his knowledge, whether that's at the NFL level or at the youth level. So he's probably just dipping his toes in it, seeing how much he's going to like it. But yeah, I mean, I know he's a tremendous leader, and how that translates in his future life, whether that's at the NFL level, whether that's at a different level. I mean, I think it's probably cool for him to get out there and kind of see what that life would look like.
I would love him to be an NFL coach because he would tell us too much.
Yeah.
He would not be able to hide things. He would tell you how he felt.
I still enjoy it.
You'll never get it, obviously, but they might have burned the tapes. But if NFL Films has any of his mic'd up, unfiltered, unedited, it is probably some of the craziest stuff you'll ever hear in your life. Half the time he doesn't even know what he's saying. He just something comes out and it's just oh damn, did I just say that? But yeah, I feel like he'd kind of be more of a chill coach. He'd probably be have an outburst every now and again when he gets frustrated, but it wouldn't be like an EB that you just constantly hear the voice.
Right.
So yeah, he is. I mean, I think he'd be great in that role, and he'd be definitely too honest being interviewed.
He's still even recently going after people on Twitter. I don't mind it at all. Goodness. Sometimes it's just burners and people trolling him, and he'll tell him all kinds of stuff that I won't repeat right now. But yeah, he's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm sure he'd make a great coach if he wanted to. I think he could easily do it.
Yeah.
Essence, Janae, thanks so much for. It says Jules, 2 Jules, a silver star. I don't know if these are memberships. I might need to go check. I'm the YouTube guy. I need to go figure out what's going on with YouTube over here. Darrell with the 2, didn't know you were live. Great pod. Thank you guys for the kind words. We have 450 people in here right now concurrent. So it's an honor to be here with you guys to talk some football. I feel like there's a lot more we could still talk about. Obviously our hour's up, but it's just, there's so much to the game. We didn't talk linebackers. You know what's funny is I'm just glad Mahomes is where he is. We didn't even talk about him because he seems fine. And this is a QB1 in the NFL coming off an ACL, LCL. We didn't even talk about him because he's just flying around, looks good. I saw Mitch, you probably saw more, Nate, but some under center stuff. He's rolling left. He's firing, sidearm, slinging it. He just looks like himself out there, and he told the media he forgets he's hurt sometimes when he's in the zone at practice.
He's pitching the ball on 4th down, on a gotta have it 4th down in practice. Sir, what are you doing? But doesn't know. He's just playing football. He's and honestly, he's a full go. I know he's not going to play in the preseason. There's no reason to play him in the preseason. But man, if they played the Broncos on Sunday, he would be out there.
You think there's no shot he plays in any of these preseason games?
No.
For the first time in his career?
Yeah, my sense talking to multiple people is it's not worth the juice is not worth the squeeze. I know Andy would feel like I just want to see it from an operation standpoint just one time. But the medical staff understands that the longer he has to wait to get hit on that with that leg, the better. And give credit to the Chiefs defensive players. Even George Karlaftis got close, I think, today, and he was like, whoa, cannot touch this man under any circumstances. So the defenses did its job, giving him good rushes, but obviously not touching him. And then, Mahomes has demonstrated that he can scramble, that he can move, that he can change directions. So I don't think we're going to see him in the preseason.
Wow. All right. I was wondering because Mahomes is always like, oh, I want to play. So I have a feeling he's still going to try. Not this game. Andy's already made it clear.
Yeah.
that fourth down play he was talking about, he was like, even in practice at training camp, he's like, I'm just trying to get a first down. I'm like, bro, you are crazy. Throw the ball away. No,
throw the ball away.
He's sprinting. Dude, Peter Woods, by the way, shot out of a cannon on that play. Last, any final takeaways from you, Mitch, just from being at practice? Anybody we didn't talk about or anything you feel like is worth mentioning before we jump off?
Not really. It's just always fun to get out there. It's fun to watch, see the coaches, see the staff, see the few guys remaining from when I was there. And, to Nate's point, just excited the next time we hop on here, we'll have some actual game action to talk about. And, preseason games when you kind of follow a team are way more fun than like the Hall of Fame game and not knowing who anybody is. So I'm excited to watch it, excited to talk about it next week.
Well, it's always an honor to be here with you guys. I'm Cole. This is Nate Taylor with ESPN. Mitchell Schwartz. I was trying to give you something current, but obviously he is the real deal. Super Bowl champ, multi-all-pro. You know the deal. I was going to say podcast extraordinaire, but I feel like that's selling Mitchell Schwartz way short to his resume. But make sure to like and sub and all the YouTube stuff. We're on audio, Spotify, all of those as well. So appreciate y'all. And with that, we'll see y'all next time.